The buddy system is great. It works for socks, Twix bars, finger guns, pew pew. And your chromosomes. You get a pair of each biological parent contributing to the instructions that make you, you. But one chromosome is much less dependent on their biological BFF than all the rest. It's so self-sufficient that it's the only chromosome that can go solo. Let's talk about X.
Let's talk about X, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the things on chromosome 23. Let's talk about X. Let's talk about X.
Yo, Jen, I don't think they're gonna play this on the internet.
And why not? Everybody has X. No, really. Everybody has an X chromosome. You wouldn't be alive if you didn't. This might feel like it contradicts what you learned in freshman biology class. X is one of the sex chromosomes, right? Well, your 23rd pair of chromosomes, typically either two X's or an X and a Y, are a little X-y, but they're not all about sex. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For context, chromosomes are long strings of information, DNA, inside each and every one of our cells that serve as our body's building blueprint, instruction manual, and roadmap. Roadmap. A thing we had before GPS. If you could successfully fold it back up, a genie would appear and grant you 3 wishes. Nope. What? That could be true. No one knows. It's never been done. Okay. Instructions on your DNA generate proteins that control basically every little thing about you. From how you look, to how you digest food, to how you fight off anything that's not you that gets into your body. Chromosomes operate in pairs, with both parts of the matching set having the same series of genes. Pairing up means that if the instructions on one of them isn't working, that is, you have a change in your DNA that causes it to function differently, or not at all, their buddy can sometimes cover for them. To give an example, say superheroes had a pair of chromosomes with all the genes that give them superpowers. Flying, spidey sense, super speed, mind reading.
Please do not start calling it my Peter tingle.
Let's go back to those finger guns. Say your superpower is finger lasers. This seems more superhero-y, right? If you had only one superhero chromosome and one finger laser gene, even a single change in that gene could mean you don't make the right proteins, or enough proteins, for it to do what it's supposed to. One change and bye-bye, pew-pew. But if you had an extra working copy, that copy might be able to give you enough of the protein you need that your finger guns, or lasers, still make you look cool. So, 22 of these pairs of buddies, your autosomes, have numbers for names, chromosomes 1 through 22. An autosome is what we call chromosomes that aren't sex chromosomes. This can be pretty misleading because your autosomes make your body work, and your sex chromosomes also make your body work. But the term sex chromosomes makes people think that if you have an X, you're biologically female, and if you have a Y, you're biologically male. I mean, half of this is true. Y chromosomes have a small number of genes, less than 200, and one set of those genes create the male reproductive system. And that's mostly all Y does, but more on that later. But the X chromosome is basically the same as your autosomes. It codes for 900 to 1400 genes, about 5% of the human genome. These genes include those involved in brain development and immunity. To more accurately rewrite the assumption about sex chromosomes, if you don't have a Y chromosome, you're female. If you don't have an X chromosome, you don't exist. Because female is the default mode for humans. But unlike the other chromosomes, X is a strong, independent chromosome and doesn't entirely depend on that partner that we talked about. In fact, X is the only chromosome that you can live with just one of. And yet, it still only makes 75% of Y's salary. While the other 22 can have errors or small missing pieces, you still need a matched set of chromosomes 1 through 22 to survive. I know. What about Y? Isn't that X's BFF? I mean, Y's great. Don't get me wrong. But Y is a bit like adding a nice accessory package onto your vehicle, rather than having an additional vehicle with all the same features in case you get a flat tire. Okay, so if you don't get a Y, you get 2 X's. If X is so great, having 2 should be twice as good, right? Well, not necessarily. Since by design some people get an X from each parent, and some people get an X and a Y, our bodies have to have a system to make sure that we each get the right amount of proteins from the genes on the X chromosome, no matter how many you have. This is called dose compensation. Without this system, either 2 X chromosomes would give you way too much, or people with only 1 X, and presumably 1 Y, wouldn't get enough. X's brilliant solution to this problem is to crumple up 1 X into a ball and toss it aside. Yep, if you have any number of X's greater than 1, your cells just hit the off switch on the extras. This is called X inactivation or lionization, in honor of Mary Lyon, the geneticist who discovered the phenomenon in 1961. And honestly, lionization sounds rad. So that's mostly what we're going to call it. So, if you looked at a collection of cells from someone with 2 X's, you'd see some cells have the maternal X activated and others have the paternal X activated. A mosaic. You can actually see this mosaic on calico cats. They have different colored patches of fur because the gene that codes for orange fur is on one copy of X, and the gene that codes for black fur is on the other copy of X. Any given patch of fur on a calico shows us the color expressed by the active X. But wait, there's a problem with this setup. What about that protective buddy system? What happens if you have a malfunctioning or non-functioning gene on an X chromosome, and no partner to cover for it? We tend to think of women as protected from these X-linked diseases because we've got a pair of X's, just like chromosomes 1 through 22. People with a Y don't have the advantage of a matched set, which is why X-linked diseases, like hemophilia, are most commonly found in males. But when you factor in lionization, don't we basically end up with just a single X after all? Wouldn't people with 2 X's still have at least a 50-50 chance of having enough cells with a gene change to cause the disease? Here's where it gets cool. With 2 X's, even though your body has a mix of cells with the typical gene and cells with a malfunctioning copy of the gene, the normal functioning cells still cover for the rogue ones. Sometimes this is because the healthy activated X's pass their protein products onto cells with faulty genes. Or consider this other scenario, where immune cells are affected by a faulty X-linked gene. Immune cells need to mature and make more copies of themselves to do their jobs. Immune cells with the faulty gene either won't be able to mature or won't be able to make more copies of themselves. The healthy immune cells will, and eventually they'll be the only ones left. Similarly, there are X-linked conditions that cause cells to die faster than they should. Boys or people with just 1 X usually don't survive the condition. But in many people with more than 1 X, as the problematic cells die off and your normal cells make more copies of themselves, your symptoms can just fade away over a few years. Right? Now, it doesn't always work out in our favor. Some people with 2 X chromosomes still get X-linked diseases. When this happens, it could be because something's not working that prevents the cell from being deactivated. Or there's non-random lionization, so you end up with more cells with the disease copies of the gene than you usually would. Sometimes even identical twins can have different lionization patterns. A skewed percentage of normal versus rogue genes in each twin can mean that one twin can have the disease while the other doesn't. Another thing I should mention is that the inactive X isn't entirely silenced. About 15% of genes escape inactivation, allowing some genes to have double the amount of proteins, or more, in someone with 2 X's. Likewise, some genes on the Y are duplicates of X genes, just like on autosomes, which has the same effect as the X genes that escape inactivation. This is why being born with only 1 X or 3 sex chromosomes can cause various developmental issues, because some genes do need 2 chromosomes to work properly. On the other hand, these chromosomal differences sometimes go undiagnosed because symptoms can be so mild. Look, partnering up has its benefits.
I want a partner.
You do want a partner.
I want a partner.
You want a partner.
Of
Good.
course, yeah.
And sometimes you gotta go it alone. Our relationship with our ex is complicated. You probably didn't need this video to tell you that. There's still a lot more to learn. To go further down a rabbit hole on what scientists do know, here's the book I used for most of my research on this piece, Females Are Mosaic. Or check out the links below.